Good morning and welcome to the Thundering 36. My name is Tyler Crone, and I'm so delighted here to welcome Garmon Newsom, who is interviewing with us for Seattle Municipal Court Position 5. Welcome, Garmon, and over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Garmon Newsom II, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. Quick background, I was born in Detroit, Michigan. My mother was an immigrant. She came here on an academic scholarship. My father was a union auto worker. After law school, I started my career in New York City as a prosecutor, New York, with the Bronx County District Attorney's Office, as well as with Special Narcotics Office. I also did civil tort litigation for the Transit Authority there. My family, my wife and I, and at that time, our first child, we have two, moved here in 2005, at least the first time. And I've served in a variety of capacities as a prosecutor, chief prosecutor, as a assistant city attorney, a senior assistant city attorney, and most recently as the city attorney for Burien. If elected to this position, I'd be able to use my experience as a former prosecutor, as a pro tem judge, which I did for King County District Court, a city attorney, a civil litigator, frankly, criminal litigator, to make meaningful changes in the lives of people that experience the court system. And frequently, when people talk about the judicial system or the court system, they only speak about the accused. Obviously, the accused is perhaps the most important person in some respects because it's their life that is maybe most immediately impacted. But it also is important for the other people that are involved, their family members, but also potentially the victims of whatever these crimes are. And it's important for everyone to understand that the crimes actually involve are actually crimes against the community. When a case is brought, the case is brought as the city of Seattle against a particular person, not John or Jane Doe versus someone. My experience in handling complex matters, civil matters, writing ordinances, contracts, managing staff, budgets, working with elected officials makes me the most qualified candidate. My decisions must be and will be based on following and applying the law, and that is what I would do if elected.
Thank you so much. Anita will now ask our prepared questions. Over to you, Anita.
Voters don't always understand the difference between the different courts and what cases they handle. What is the job of the Seattle Municipal Court, and how do you explain the differences between courts at different levels?
Okay. So, first of all, our court system is the bedrock of how we administer justice as well as how we operate in a democracy. If you don't, it's Seattle Municipal Court, excuse me, democracies don't work if you don't have a independent judiciary. Seattle Municipal Court is a highly and very busy court. It's where people first either engage or are subjected to the criminal justice system. It handles misdemeanors, so those are crimes in which the penalties are up to 364 days in jail and a fine of up to $5,000. It also handles traffic tickets and city ordinance violations, which are civil matters. Civil matters generally don't have jail penalties, but they typically have fines. Uh, More broadly, the focus of Seattle Municipal Court is justice. More specifically, public safety, accountability, and responsiveness to those that have been harmed. And that means the victims as well as those who have perhaps even witnessed what took place. Most folks don't talk about the last part, but it matters because the victims are also important in this process and they shouldn't be forgotten. King County District Court also handles criminal and civil matters, but it handles it for everything outside of Seattle, well, outside of Seattle, but not in another incorporated city. I pro tem'd in in King County District Court, and have had experience with those cases. King County Superior Court handles felonies, higher value civil cases such as land use cases, as well as family and juvenile cases. I've handled felonies, higher value civil cases, as well as land use cases. Then there's the Court of Appeals, which reviews the decisions upon appeal, upon request, of the trial courts. It doesn't hear evidence and it doesn't actually try the case. I've handled and prepared briefs for appellate courts and argued before appellate courts. And then there's the Washington State Supreme Court, which is the highest court, which has the final word in terms of interpretation of Washington law. And I have also prepared peace and prevailed on a case that was before the Washington State Supreme Court. With my last moment, I'll just point out that I also have experience in federal courts as well.
The second question, Most non-lawyers or folks not in contact with the court don't really know how to make a decision on how to vote for judges, and many don't vote because of that. How do you recommend voters figure out who to vote for in a judicial race? And how do we ensure that judicial races do not become de facto partisan?
So why don't we start with maybe experience representation, independence, integrity, or ethics? So first, I'll start with the experience. Municipal court judges need to have experience, not just criminal, but civil experience as well. At a minimum, just to be competent. It's the experiences of handling things like budgets and contracts, managing staff, creating policies, and frankly, being the person making the hard decisions sometimes, whether it pleases the public or not, that makes a candidate, in my view, a stellar candidate. Representation. Seattle judges, we need to have some judges that can relate to the marginalized experience that some or all defendants may have experienced, and to ensure that some, not just some, but all defendants are heard and treated respectfully in the system. As an African American man who served as a prosecutor, I understand the challenge of being wary of the legal system, especially how it treats the poor and how it treats racial minorities, generally speaking, unfairly in many instances, while also trying to meet the lofty goals of being a prosecutor, which is to do justice, not merely to get a conviction. Some people lose sight of that. In terms of independence, integrity, or ethics, this always applies, but I think it goes to your concern about partisanship. The first canon of the Code of Judicial Conduct requires a judge to uphold and promote the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary, as well as avoiding the appearance of or actually engaging in impropriety. My professional experiences have included upholding the law even when it's been unpopular.
All right, our third question. As artificial intelligence tools become more prevalent in legal settings, how have you observed their use in the courtroom, and what standards should guide courts in balancing efficiency with risks related to bias, reliability, and fairness?
So I think we all have heard stories about AI in terms of how some firm or an attorney has used AI to write a motion or a brief, which then utilizes or creates false or non-existent cases or law. Yes, AI failed in that situation, but in reality, the real failure was on the part of the attorney or attorneys because AI, like other things, is just a tool. And as such, it can't be used to kind of replace human judgment, judicial judgment, compassion, and empathy. And frankly, it's not really a replacement for actually doing the work. The best use of AI is a tool as a tool to improve the court system and improve access to the court system. So a couple of examples might be remote access to the courts, plain language legal guidance, automated document and form preparation. That's a big part of serving as a judge is having to try to create these documents, frankly, on the fly while parties are talking, trying to make sure that you're getting down the agreements or the understandings as everyone is speaking about it. Automated display of exhibits, language access and translation, whether it be for an accused or for witnesses. AI and other technologies are powerful tools, but they're not infallible. They also reflect biases and there are questions about reliability and fairness because it matters what's input into AI in terms of what you get out of AI. So courts have to monitor the responses based on a variety of factors, including but not limited to race, nationality, income, and that means that it has to constantly be scrutinized and verified. Finally, to ensure that AI is used properly or any technology, there needs to be human oversight. Judges and attorneys still have to be the final decision makers. There needs to be transparency. The parties and the court need to discuss what are they expecting or how are they planning on using AI and what's the extent of that use. How do we protect the information that AI receives in listening or being present during the trial? And then finally, it needs to be designed for people to be able to use it. It doesn't help if it's only able to be used by an AI or, excuse me, by a tech person.
And our last prepared question, how do you proactively seek out furthering your knowledge and understanding of bias, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility? And how have you applied that to your work?
This feels almost like a little bit of a loaded question for me, but I think the reality is purposefully and intentionally living and listening to others and doing so with humility. I certainly recognize that my experience is just one version of an experience that people have. It's not necessarily the same as everyone else. So, in a sense, I've enjoyed privileges that perhaps other folks haven't. Um, I don't know if people necessarily always kind of think that initially, but I recognize it. I think the best way to address these concerns or to understand them is to, one, listen to people and listen to their life experiences. That's seniors, that's disability rights advocates, it's defendants, it's prosecutors and public defense, court staff, domestic violence advocates. They all have experiences, they all have observations, and they have things that are of value to know. Second, obviously by attending training as well as I'm a believer in reading. I think reading about things is very helpful because it gives a different perspective because there's no way that we can all live everyone else's experiences. Third, by leaning into empathy and compassion, it's important for a judge while sitting to, in some respects, put him, her, or themselves in the seat of the person that's before them to try to understand why are they here? What is the cause of this? Is there a solution other than, or what is the solution just, and perhaps that's all that it is. And then fourth, and the last one of this list for me is frankly, I've found listening to my kids. I have two, 22 and 19, and I've come to find that they actually understand some things that perhaps I didn't necessarily appreciate as well. So I think that that's also another tool. I'm running low on time, but I just want to kind of point out that being who I am, I've experienced a lot of some of these types of experiences. I've been discouraged from practicing or from pursuing going to law school. I've been singled out and treated poorly by parties, by judges, and so forth. All of that helps lend to me the understanding that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. I recognize if I want it, I know other people want it too. Thank you for letting me go over on that last question.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful interview with us. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any follow up questions from my collaborators in the room. Anita.
Would you tell us a little bit more about what a judge does for budget management?
Absolutely. So one of the things is, and I think the city of Seattle and Seattle Municipal Court are experiencing now, there's a budget shortfall in the city, which of course impacts how the different departments are able to operate. Because when the city says we need a 5 or 10% reduction in budget, and they say it for each department, that means that now the municipal court needs to find 5 to 10% to cut. That impacts services. It impacts the ability to provide services in a timely manner. That's critical. And the last time, my understanding is the last time the city of Seattle went through this process, they lost somewhere around 20 people out of probation. That's very, very serious because we all know that some of the services that accused or defendants need, trying to keep them out of the system, one of those things is having probation. Well, if you don't have enough probation officers, it makes it much more difficult to operate that program. Was there another part to that question that I failed to answer? I just want to, just in case.
No, I didn't understand how much a judge manages the
Okay.
budget itself.
If there are other questions, I actually have a follow up question for you. I
Okay.
think one of the pieces that perhaps Seattle voters will be looking at is what we can learn from and understand during your period and tenure in Burien. And I'm
Okay.
wondering if there are kind of any thoughts that you would want, what as a Seattle voter should I think about or take away from that tenure?
Sure.
We'll see if there are any other follow-ups, and then I'm just going to let you know that we'll have a loose amount of time for you to just share any thoughts that you would like in kind of a closing period,
Okay.
just to foreshadow what will come next. But as a Seattle voter, what should I think about? Thank you.
Concerning my time in Burien,
Just like takeaways, like what should
okay.
I learn from it? What should I think about it? I'm just kind of opening. You could run with this question any which way
Okay.
you would like.
I think one, I was clearly very dedicated to the city of Burien. I was an appointed official rather than an elected official, and that impacts how and what I can do. An elected city attorney gets to create his, her, their own policies and so forth. As an appointed person, obviously I have to serve, the council as well as the council's representatives. But we had a great deal of of success in terms of things that were implemented. Some of these things were implemented over or against my objection, but again, all I can do is give the legal advice. The ultimate decision is for the council. I think people can take from the different court decisions that have been rendered that even if I don't agree with something, I will do my very best to ensure that it will comply with the law. And I think that probably is very consistent and very necessary for every judge.
That was a super helpful answer to understand. I had not understood that distinction. So thank you so much for that
Of course,
clarification.
you're welcome.
Barbara, I'm going to have you ask your question. This will be our last follow up, and then we'll give you just a loose amount of time to share some final thoughts with us. Barbara?
Okay.
Hello, I have a little bit of trouble with my audio. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay, so I really enjoyed meeting you and talking to you at Rough and Tumble. We shared for a long time. I wanted to ask you, what, if anything, your East Coast origins and background and experience bring to Seattle. We talked about that for a long time, how much we liked being from the East Coast and having left and arrived in Seattle. How do you think that differentiates you as would it as a municipal judge?
Well, I think because, the court system in New York is so extensive, because the city is so large, because of the quantity of cases. So, for instance, the Bronx County District Attorney's Office, I believe at the time that I was there were roughly 400 attorneys, and there were roughly 400 members of staff. I remember that my incoming class was either 50 or 60 baby prosecutors coming in, whether from law school or transferring in from a law firm or something like that. So obviously, it's just the quantity of work, the calendar sizes, where easily you're in a courtroom with 100 cases on the calendar for that calendar. You may not be handling it by yourself, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, and being comfortable doing that work, frankly, I haven't felt overwhelmed anyplace else. That certainly is a benefit, but I also think it's also a perspective that I've had, because a lot of things that I've learned, you learn because in New York, you really have so many people from so many different backgrounds from all across the country. And I see that my time has run out. But thank you for that question, for the opportunity. But I never actually considered myself an East Coast person. But
um, we will now provide you a few minutes here to share any final thoughts, reflections, and closing comments for us. Thank you so much for interviewing with us today.
all right, thank you. And it's been my pleasure. I feel a little less nervous at this point than I did when I started. So first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the questions, frankly. And most importantly, I think I need to thank you for your commitment. Because I'm seeking your endorsement because I understand that it represents, among other things, in a judicial race, an opportunity for voters to understand who can be trusted, who's been vetted, and who's prepared to serve them and the community with fairness and integrity, respect for the law. In addition, your endorsement is also about action, because I suspect that if you're satisfied with at least one of your candidates, that at least some of you will be involved in reaching out to voters in ensuring that people who care about justice, who care about fairness, who care about equity actually show up and participate, whether it's actually being active on a campaign trail or simply voting or helping people get to vote. In a race like this, especially where there are three people at this stage, that kind of engagement can make a lot of or a significant difference. Um, I'll just add that I think if I earn your endorsement, um, it's not something that I would ignore. I have to admit, I kind of sort of look forward to trying to meet with you again, just because I've actually enjoyed it. I hope you can tell that I've enjoyed it. It just it's been a positive experience. I have to say, I'm not sure that the campaigning necessarily is such a great thing, but I think the meeting people, listening to people, understanding what matters, understanding where we kind of have similar values, and understanding even if our views aren't similar on something, understanding, okay, so this is the why, this is why this is important. Okay, I need to hold on to that in order to understand it and to potentially use it when necessary. Um, so. I'll strive to do my absolute best as I believe I try in every effort. Understand that in applying the law as a judge, you're required to apply the law whether you agree with it or not. So there may be laws that exist in Seattle that I may not be a fan of, but I'm obligated to apply that law. So I'm asking for your support, I'm asking for your endorsement, and it's been a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us. This ends the formal part of our interview.